So the dollar will remain high. We're going to keep going at it. And there's no problems.
Dollar went high. As the dollar goes higher, by the way, I bet the VIX goes higher. And by the way, this is great. Dan brought this up in the call. I'll let him explain his thesis, but it's great for small caps. But I'll just get back to Yellen. First of all, Yellen's been around forever, and I mean this in a positive way. It's complimentary. She's actually seen so many different crises and administrations. And her discussion, though, about fiscal policy, let's not forget she's part of the administration now. And what we're seeing around the world are administrations that are going through political cycles that do not like what's happening with monetary policy. And I think we're given ground in this country, too. And again, our central bank's independent, but the administration's not independent. They have some goals out there. I'll just say one more thing about where this reminds me, though, when I look at European sovereign debt yields. And we heard the ECB point out today that they can issue debt, and they can issue debt to aid higher yielding economies and those that are hit more by energy issues. But again, it's the ECB looking to monetize what they have that are structural issues. So Italian yields are not terribly far off where they were in the worst of the sovereign crisis. And so reminding what Peter said, what we all know, this went from a private market crisis in the great financial crisis where it was all shifted on the public balance sheets. And we've just been kicking it down the road. And central banks have forced UK pension funds into this, by the way. I mean, all pension funds have to fund liabilities, and they're pushed out the risk curve. They have no choice.
Yeah.
And that's what every, again, sophisticated investor that we rely on in this world has been forced to do.
We were just talking the other day about hedges, and now traditional hedges have not worked. Think about pension funds that use bonds as the ballast in their allocations. And what have bonds done?
Fixed income. Remember that? What's that name mean?
What do they do now?
You know, this really feels like they're going to stick their finger in that hole to plug that, and then they're going to have to do this, and then this, and they're going to run out of fingers soon enough. And given all the uncertainty about the global economy, I just think that, again, you know, I don't think we're on the precipice of anything like, it doesn't feel like 07, like that sort of magnitude. But the Fed is going to have to stop QT very soon. I mean, it's just very simple because financial conditions are going to get to a point where it really does run the risk of pushing some of these situations over the edge. And if we're waiting for some sort of credit event, that would be the thing. So that's what they'll do after the November 2nd meeting, I suspect, at some point later in this year.
Doesn't that set us up for a rally, which is a vicious cycle of pivot, rally, here's things harder for the Fed?
Here's the good news about this week. With all the money center banks reporting at the end of the week, they're trading very poorly here into it, right? And those outlooks are not going to be great. We spent half the show talking about what Jamie Dimon had to say yesterday. So the lower we go into that is the likelihood that we probably rally out of it, because maybe some of the estimates have come down enough. And this is what we saw in July with the Q2 earnings. They came down enough where they weren't so bad that we kind of rallied out into it.
Yeah, I mean, I just think it's tough to trade the market setting up for a pivot of either QT or monetary policy. I think that adds fuel to the fire and emboldens the Fed to continue along the path that they're currently on. And we can talk about, okay, perhaps, yes, I'm with you, Dan, that in terms of the PE multiples, those have definitely come down. But I still think there's a whole heck of a lot of hair on the E part. And that is where investors are focused. And unless that finds a floor, I think QT, monetary policy, and all the other headwinds will all point down to the fact that we still continue to head lower.